Started again, we had three main focus areas. We started to understand the environment, the human factors, the technology, and the scientific innovation. And again, some of the questions that we have raised: who are we talking about when we talk about wildfire risk management strategy? So we have identified clearly what are the scope and boundaries of Silvanus. Nobody can solve everything, and I'm really glad throughout the day we had so much of complementary analysis, complementary discussion points that we did not cover. Silvanus completely did not have a scope, and we are happy to have those results and outcomes to be a part of the complementary and also the strategy based on what has been presented so far. So going beyond, not going to go through all this in detail, but what you see here is a scientific chart that clearly indicates measurements and decisions and having an yes or no branches, and very much a systemic approach where we identify the preparedness activities on the top, and then you associate a measure of risk, and based on the risk you then act upon the risk measurements, and based on the assessment you wait for a fire incident to be reported. So far all the different technologies what has been presented will indicate us or will give us the evidence at an early stage when there is a potential fire incident. And then what happens in that magic bullet box is what I'm going to talk about today, which is about decision support system. What does it mean, and what action should be taken when you take it, and with whom you collaborate while taking those actions. So the decision support system, which we haven't touched upon so far, extends into two main activities. One is the cloud. What does it mean? I will explain a bit later. And then forward command center, FCCs. And then more importantly, what happens after the fire has been completely extinguished. So going beyond, I'm very glad to also, as I said, the use of AI has already allowed us to publish several papers, academic publications with clear validation, peer review process, and with more than 40 papers, I think, as an innovation action, we are extremely proud. So what are we talking about here is to have a very clear set of products, and as you have seen, heard me so far, we always talk about products that are directed and delivered to certain stakeholders. And Zoltan before presented a simple app that was directed towards a wider population beyond a researchers community, beyond our let's say professional stakeholders. So breaking that down, you will see this big DSS component, which was a small one block, but that block again gets broken down into so many different components that each and every single one plays a role in how to counteract when there is a fire incident. Now, the complexity of Silvanus is just not having in one location, in one place, but we have many different technologies that are being deployed at the ground level, at the field level. Some of the experiments we conducted, they are hardware devices that did not exist before Silvanus. Silvanus really given the stimulus to develop hardware devices, and of course any hardware development should also be supported with the software development, and for software development you need to have maintenance, you need to have infrastructure, you need to have IT, and this is what you are seeing here, both at the edge, at the cloud, the far edge component, and then the edge devices, what has been displayed here. The biggest challenge that we overcame is how do they all communicate with each other? Because sometimes we just take it for granted that 5G, 4G, Wi-Fi, they all exist in the world, right? We just don't think about it. But when we went to the best experience, when we went to Slovakia, in the mountains, it just doesn't exist. It's not there. So how do we call someone like 1 kilometer away, 2 kilometers away? We just couldn't. So literally we have to physically, one person should take and go somewhere and then talk to someone. And thanks to Starlink and also thanks to the mesh in the sky component, we were then able to establish communication that didn't exist before. So going to the field and explaining or having these devices that are being installed on the field, then you realize so many practical challenges that we needed to overcome. And when you start building all these different blocks, then comes the question, what information is most relevant and when is it relevant? And that's where we have map interface, which every project has the map interface, but then to have the ability to select how much information is relevant and when is it to be activated, because some information will not exist before that component or before that data is being sensed and brought into the system. So all the layers that you see here, they all have a much more complicated way in which they are being ingested, and also having some alerts and notifications, and every processing that takes time has to have a communication protocols to make sure that alert is being received. So with that, and now that I have spoken a lot, let's just take a look at some video examples. I will simply talk about what you are seeing here. So we start with the fire danger. That's our baseline. For any risk assessment that you can perform in a laboratory setting is to collect the data, use the Earth observation data, perform the analysis. And then you use the citizens as your first line of defense to collect information, whether it's from the citizen engagement app or through the social media sensing. You collect, and then you analyze, you verify, you validate. And then the next component, you see the evidence here. And the next one is the social media sensing. Again, there were several publications came out of this topic. How do you verify a fire? Because fire doesn't naturally be a very common place of discussion. It has many different connotations. And how do you analyze if somebody is talking about a fire, that fire does really exist? So here are some practical results that explain all the operations, etc. So you also have the verification. Okay. Now that we have established that there is a fire, the next topic is decision support system. What do we do? Once we know that there is a fire, there is real evidence of a fire, and you have verified it with multiple sensors, the next step is to start with fire spread model. For the fire spread model, as I said, using AI, you can put all the different types of combinations, metrics, parameters, and you can simulate different simulator models. And this is one example where you temporally fast forward where the fire could be in the next, let's say, time period. And once you have identified the potential spread, then it becomes, let's say, easier to plan your resource response coordination, identifying how much of fire suppression resources needs to be deployed and how long it takes to deploy them. Because as any firefighter would say, it's not the easiest process to determine. The approach roads are not available, the transportation is not available, you are not having enough resources, or you may even have resources, but transportation always takes time, and even the fire incidents are taking place in a much, much farther duration or distance. Once you have identified the fire, once you have identified the resource planning, assume that it takes time to bring all the resources. The most important activity is to identify the toxicity, pollution level, and find out the safe evacuation route planning. And all this is being visualized in order to give sufficient confidence to the firefighters to safely evacuate. That every time you have an evacuation route, it also comes with an expiry part. So not every route will be constantly safe because the fire is spreading. That means the toxicity and the weather conditions that will push the smoke into a different direction is also taken into account to set expiry time for every route that has been identified. So now that we have safely evacuated, and hopefully by that time we have the resources in the right place to attack and conduct the fire suppression, the next topic is to rehabilitate. And now that you have heard me speak so long, I will see if this you will hear.
SILVANUS Map is a wildfire monitoring tool designed to provide fast, accurate, and safe information. Open Map gathers wildfire-related data from multiple sources, processes it using time series analysis, and delivers clear, actionable insight through intuitive data visualization. After logging in, users arrive at the analysis area page. Creating an analysis area is simple. Input key details such as project name, area, and date. Select a region by drawing directly on the map. Choose a specific feature, including Cleanliness Monitoring Index, Ecological Resilience Index, Biodiversity Index, or Mobility Alert System. When the analysis is complete, users can explore results through Data Visualization Dashboard. Displays NDVI, NBR, temperature and precipitation trends, GDP and population density, program regulation, and fire events. This streamlined process ensures that wildfire data is accessible, actionable, and reliable.
Just as a disclaimer, we have the platform. by no means we are the experts. We give the platform, we give the tools, and then we ask the experts to configure what the biodiversity metric or indices should look like, and we get their input, and then we program it in the system itself. So what you saw is simply an enabler, and I'm sure there will be more effort needed to bring this technology forward. So let me move on. Now, what did we learn from all these DSS and all these technology adaptations, and what are the key takeaway messages? In the morning, we had our strategy paper, so I'm not going to go through all this in detail. All these are again, somebody said there was like 500-page deliverables to be summarized in 7 minutes. I'm sure this is the same, this also falls in the same category. But the key lessons that we found out is using technology. And as the technology gets more and more innovative and the cost of every new system decreases, starting from the drones, I believe we definitely have scope for using IoT devices. One of the biggest challenges that we overcame is power supply. It will be so simple, just put batteries, but how long? For how far? How do you replace them? Should it be a manual inspection? Can we use solar? But you were talking about a forest. What do you mean by solar? How far you should go up? Every single practical question was addressed. And I believe there is a scope in which we can definitely bring forward such systems. And of course, the use of UAVs and UGVs would definitely play a huge role, especially if you have identified there is a sufficient multi-sensorial evidence of a fire incident. We can effectively deploy drones at the fastest level and identify and verify not the presence of fire, because that's already done, the severity of fire. How fast, how big is the fire? And again, using AI, we have the ability to quantify the intensity of the fire. And then with the DSS, with mobile apps, evacuation route plan, all of this system combined together, we believe, at least from the evidence that we have generated, will allow us to measure and quantify the roadmap, not from 25, but to reach 2030 Green Deal targets. Some of the technologies will directly contribute, not all of them will directly contribute, but every single decision that we make in that project has been led by the vision, with the ambition to reach the 2030 Green Deal targets with expected impact. And the last but not least, how do we monitor? We have a long way to go. What you saw so far is the information being collected from the sensor, analyzed, processed, simplified, presented. But is this the end? What about interactions? What if I want to ask a question? Can I ask a different query? Can we have multiple data sources being combined? But so far, we have done our level best to integrate data and to generate insight, but we have not taken into account the what if and asking. Oh, okay, so here is the fire spread. If I put X amount of water and I have mitigated the spread in this area, what is the situation? There are still much more further direction of travel that we should take, and here are some examples of what it looks like in the future. And with that, I really want to thank you for your attention and also bearing with me for whole day today. Thank you.